and
Yeah.
watch for any more. Well, people that are joining now won't know about the panel thing.
Well, I'm just going to make that announcement now. So, welcome everybody to the digital forum. We've got a really great turnout this month. I had over 85 people sign up. We have room for 100 before we have to increase our Zoom meeting to the next level, which we're going to have to figure out how to do. But right now we have 48 people here, so welcome. There are two groups of people here. We have attendees, which we're depending on you to ask questions in the Q&A. And so far we have one question, so hopefully we'll get a lot more. We have panelists, which they got here early and have good video and good sound. And we're able to let in up to 30 people as panelists. So right now, if you have good video and good sound and want to participate a little bit more, please raise your Zoom hand and Ken will let you in as a panelist. Otherwise, you can sit and watch and listen and ask questions. Jim, you're not able to talk because right now you're just an attendee. If you want to be a panelist, raise your Zoom hand, but we want you to have good video and good audio. So, I think we'll just get started here as more people float in. Ken, it's probably getting hard. I know we got one more with the Zoom hand raised somewhere in there.
I got it.
Okay. That's Pat. Great. Well, again, welcome. It's great to see everybody. So we'll get started. We got a question from Ken Bowman. With the advent of Luminar and now Photoshop with sky replacement, do you see a need for a new category in the Wacko competition? That was something we were going to start bringing up. Perhaps something like artistic and maybe restricted, open to more restrictive edits. Yeah, we are talking about that in the competition group level, and it was something that we're trying to figure out how to do. I know later on in the second hour, I plan to show all the new Photoshop and Lightroom stuff that came out this week from Adobe Max. Photoshop sky replacement is just amazing. Luminar 4's was pretty good, and I really like how Photoshop's works. I was using Luminar, and now we have Photoshop, and we'll show how that works later on. What does anybody in our group here think? Have any? Yeah, Marty.
Yeah, so yeah, I've already had discussions with our club members about this, and that's really a good valid point. I mean, at what point do we go from taking and making photos to creating art, so to speak? And I kind of believe that there should be some sort of a different category for that when we enter into competitions. For those that I think don't have quite the skills on the computer or want to get into all that type of editing, it kind of creates an unfair playing field when we can create such things so easily, and yet you're up against people who really don't have the knowledge, the skills, or the tools to do that.
Right. Yeah. I agree. My feeling.
Yeah. Open.
Yeah, that's true. my thought is that, and it makes it easier with Photoshop because I haven't figured out how to do it yet in Luminar, is to use my own photos as the sky replacement. That way, at least it's your own photo. My biggest problem right now is like in Luminar and even in the Photoshop one, you're using somebody else's photo, so it's not theirs. Yeah,
Actually,
Marty.
in Luminar, that's actually fairly easy, and I can walk through that. Later on, when you're doing your other part, I can actually demonstrate that too.
Okay.
This past
Yeah.
Thursday night, I actually did a Luminar tutorial for our group, so I can kind of show you that.
Yeah, I know there's a way to do it. I just hadn't looked at it real close yet. And it's just in Photoshop, it's nice and easy because they have a little plus sign and you can actually add it in.
It's pretty much the same way in Luminar.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. But yeah, to me, it has to be your own, should be your own photos, both Sky and the original. And that's where I'm running into a little bit of a problem with it.
I agree with that. That was something I stressed Thursday, was that, you know, if we're going to do it, if it's going to be our work, it should be our work.
Right. Right.
Like any composited image, you shouldn't be using somebody else's image in a composite. And it's virtually the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I
I'm sort of
speak
waiting
if
to see
you're-
what, go ahead.
I can speak to what happened with the club where I come from. I just moved to Wisconsin last year, but for the last 5 years, the club that I was a member of, one of the clubs that I was a member of, fought with this issue. Every year we had a vote to change the rules, trying to deal with this problem. And the result that seems to have stuck in the last couple of years is the fact that they had a category for what they called realistic and a category for altered reality. And so if photos look realistic, you can opt to put them in the realistic category. And if you are trying new things like putting photos together with extra moons and that sort of thing, or whatever alterations that you want to make, you put them into that category. And it's pretty much gentleman's agreement that the one rule they stuck to though was that all parts of the photo, the composite, has to be taken by you. They have to be your photos. But they talked about the fact that it's hard to put rules on people that you can't enforce, because it's very difficult to enforce rules that you can or can't make these changes to a file when you can't really prove it, or it's very difficult to.
I know how to dig into the Photoshop files and a lot of the files to find the file history to see what's been done, but it's a lot of effort and takes a lot of time to dig out exactly what everybody's done to their image. So it gets a little tricky.
Yeah, Photoshop's making that a lot easier too. I saw an article today that they're putting more information to find out what's been done with photos and how they're altered.
Right. Yep. Yeah, they are.
I think also what I've seen in my other club is this desire to have like the separate category, because you end up with, open is so broad that you do have these realistic open category images being judged alongside some more creative stylistic photos. And at least in my other club, there's been some people who've been vocal about they don't like that there really is no place to put these stylistic ones, that historically they at least feel, this is just what I've heard, they feel that those photos don't do very well in the open category. The judges just tend to lean towards the more realistic ones. So they kind of feel left out in the competition, that they just don't have a place to put their type of art in there. So I'm just kind of echoing the desire for the.
The club that I came from had the opposite problem, in that they had some very good artists that took every month, those are the ones that won the competitions, and it didn't give the people who were doing the traditional type of photography, realistic looking photography, a chance. It also ran into the problem of defining what realistic means. I mean, we've had photos, some of Ansel Adams' photos may not look realistic. If you have a silhouette in front of a sunset, that's really not very realistic, but we've accepted it because it's been around forever.
Right. Right. So no, it's going to be something that Wacko's going to be debating quite a bit, especially as it keeps getting easier and easier to do. So hard to know what we should be doing and how we're going to do it, because it is a little tricky.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm thinking maybe once we get to the point where we get just about everybody that is going to attend this meeting is on. I don't know how that polling function works, but maybe we could just do a simple poll to see how many would like a separate creative category instead of the open category for all these artistic type of photos.
Yeah. I've got a bunch of polls, but I don't have one for that. Oh, wait here. Maybe I can I add a poll?
Well, you're working on that, Jeff. Ken, it looks like Jim Kurowski would like to be added as a panelist. I don't know if we can still do
Yeah,
that.
I just added Jim. He put something in the chat box, so I just added him as a panelist. And Jim, if you want to talk, you're going to have to unmute your microphone, and your video is probably muted right now too.
Yeah, I just see that. Thank you for changing that. That's very helpful. But yeah, I've been looking into this. Sorry, I don't have everything set up now because I couldn't see the pictures before. But anyway, I do think we need to, as a committee, sit down and look into this whole situation, because there's so much now that can be done or changed on your photos and the way it's done. I think there need to be different categories so that you can say this category is fine for doing this and this category is not.
I'm putting in a poll here as soon as I can fix all my spelling mistakes. I'm trying to figure out how to word it too real quick.
I thought you were sending Morse code.
Yeah, can't you tell? Tap, tap, tap.
That would be
That's what happens when you go with a clicky keyboard.
That would be a real old school poll, wouldn't it, if you were using Morse code?
Yeah, it really would be. I'm just going to put it in as a yes and no. Should we create a different category in Wacko for an artistic category? I know that's not very good grammar or anything like that, but on the fly, oh, okay, so I gotta create.
And to give a little history, right now our open categories in Wacko are completely open. You can make any type of adjustments or artistic changes that you want and enter it in Wacko as an open, and it would be acceptable.
But I think, let me give you another example of where we just had nature category in, and I had some pictures from up in the Michigan area. And if you look in the mountain or the hills, way in the background, zoom way in, you see a cell tower, which would make that picture not usable for natural or for the nature category. So we also may need to look into some of those rules, because unless you're lucky enough to be able to go out west, where maybe you can find areas where there's no cell towers, anybody who takes pictures of mountains or high areas, that's the place that cell towers go. And even though it's maybe a thousandth of the picture and you have to zoom way in to see it, it's now disqualified. So I think we need to sort of look at some of these rules that we've had in place that we may have to say, well, maybe that one may be acceptable, but maybe it's not. I know we have a no removal policy, and I had an example of where I was at a place where there was a lake and there was some litter in the lake, and you could see the litter with the photo. But if I would have come back one day later, that litter is not there because it's not even a permanent part of the lake. So technically you can't move that litter, but yet it would make that picture not usable in the natural category. So I think we need to sort of look at a whole bunch of rules now, I think, that might need some modification.
Yeah, I think you're right. Things are changing so rapidly, and some of that stuff with nature is getting more difficult to shoot. And I know sometimes we disqualify an image for something that's so minor, but that's the kind of stuff that we'd like to see you guys bring up to your delegates so that the delegates can get it to the competition. And we'll take it, Ken and I will certainly keep talking about it at the competition meeting. Well, so far, I'll end this poll because I've given everybody almost 3 minutes to vote. Anybody else wants to vote real quick, but I can tell you right now that I don't have a single vote for no, for that everybody would like to see us do an artistic category. So I think
Yeah,
that
and
is
then,
something
Jeff,
that we'll have to look at.
Brian just put a chat note that the challenge will be to define open creative.
Right.
And so the competition committee would be the ones that will have to work through that.
Yep. And that's going to be the biggest trick, is how do we define it? And we need to probably expand. Well, we've changed nature category a little bit now to include tethers and other stuff for wild birds, to let people be able to use, like our birds of prey photo shoot in the nature category. We maybe need to look at nature for adding some of that stuff that's way off in the distance, because it is getting harder for people to do nature stuff unless you see a lot of human stuff. So here's the results, just so everybody can see. So we will definitely bring that to the competition committee and work on that. Anybody yeah,
We have
Trey,
another.
I agree. We don't want to take the fun out of photography,
Okay.
and we're trying to make the rules as loose as we can. So that is something that I don't like to see, really heavy rules, but we need some rules, unfortunately, for some of this. Since we have so many people here, to give me a better idea, because we have 51 total people, I ran this poll last month, just so I have a better idea so that I can work on different things. If everybody could quickly just vote on the programs that you're using to process your images. And you can check all the different ones that you may use, but this will help me in figuring out, what we should be talking about the most. And as we keep working on these things, we will bring in people. I'm hoping if we can keep with participants of 50 or more people, I believe we'll be able to get some guest speakers in the second hour of this group to do more. So hopefully it's great to see 51 people. And I know we have 85 or so that signed up, but I know Saturday mornings is hard for a lot of people to get to these meetings. But Zoom makes it pretty easy. Wow, interesting results. I'm going to have to figure out what the other is. If people that voted for other would want to put in the chat what programs you're using so that we have a better idea, that would be great. Because I'll save this chat so that I can get a better idea. Because there are a lot of programs out there. I only listed the top ones, and I know there's a few more. Yeah, I should have put in DxO and Topaz, I guess.
And maybe break out Lightroom and Photoshop and have them as two separate things.
Yeah. Well, generally I kept them together because if somebody has Lightroom, they generally have Photoshop, but they may use a lot of, and it's interesting, nobody uses Photo Mechanics, which was one that I use a lot. Interesting. Yeah. Just so everybody can see, Photoshop and Lightroom is about 75% of the group. So, but we will talk about the others quite a bit. Next month I was going to talk about On1 Photo Raw because they have a new portrait section that's pretty good, and we'll probably be talking about Luminar's new
AI.
I forgot the name.
AI.
New one. Yeah, AI. I've got that coming and am learning about it real soon. So one other poll that I wanted to do quick is area of interest, so that we have a better idea what everybody's interested in. Again, this is multiple answers, so this way I know better what people we can bring in.
Somebody's got a plane landing in their backyard.
Yeah, you could hear the plane landing going over my house. It shows how sensitive my microphone is. All right. Well, this is great. This is going to help get a lot more, get us into some areas. Geez, he's flying right over the top of a place. Maybe I'm getting bombed. I don't know. While everybody's answering, again, I will put down anybody that would like to join the panel. Just please raise your Zoom hand and we'll bring you in. We do have room for about 10 or 15 more people. Just in case you missed my first announcements, you need good audio and good video. Okay, it looks like most everybody has voted. So just so that everybody can see it and so that I get a record of it in our videos, landscape photography wins, then nature, along with birds. So
Well, a lot of macro there too, Jeff.
yeah, and a lot of macro. Yeah, actually macro came in second, tied with nature. So we'll have to find some people that are good at macro. I don't do that much of it, but this isn't, this digital forum group is not something that I want to be talking the whole time. I want this to be a shared type thing. That's sort of why the last digital forum went away, was I ended up doing most of the talking at the meetings. If everybody remembers it, at the Menominee Falls Library. But we had some good times and that. So does anybody have any other questions? Yeah, we might be able to, Kathy, we might be able to bring in Mike Moats if we can get enough people in this group. I think we'd need to get a few more than the 51. Yeah, that's, as we can grow this group and get more people, I think we'll have more power to be able to get, better, some speakers in. And then we also have to see if we can convince Wacko to maybe spend some money on speakers and do this. My thought was that we could do a lot more speakers than just our March big seminar. We could do speakers through this group. And if we can get enough people attending all the time. So great.
I think, Jeff, I mean, this is kind of the inaugural Zoom one. And for instance, when we have our club meeting here in a couple of weeks, if we go back to our clubs and kind of really explain to our members what's going on with it, maybe that'll help entice more individual members to get involved.
Yeah. We had one last month and we had 20 some people, and that one went pretty well. This one, we, with the announcement that I put out, we got a lot more people signed up. Like I said, we have 85 people signed up. Now I know it's hard to get here on a Saturday morning, so I didn't expect all 85. 51's a great number, so I appreciate everybody that's here and listening and watching. We need more questions in the Q&A, so if people have questions, please put it in so we can talk about it. I only have so much that I can talk about. But while we're waiting for more questions, I'll keep throwing out polls, because this is going to help me in doing a talk. I do have one on storing images, because I'm curious. I'm trying to figure out how everybody stores their images. Do you do it by category or date? Has been an interesting one. I know I keep going back and forth on that one, and I'm wondering how many people back up. I'll give an example. I just had a customer this last month that, and Sandy, it's not you this time, who brought me a hard drive, and he had all his photos on this one hard drive, and it crashed, and it crashed hard, and no backups whatsoever. And so he ended up sending it to Drive Savers, which is the final place to go to rescue your images. And I believe it cost him $2,500 to recover his images. He was able to recover them because they take it into a clean room, disassemble it, and they're able to pull the images off and then send him a brand new hard drive with the images on. And now he has 3 backups going. But he learned the hard way. And I've had a few others go through the same thing. So something
Jeff, there's a
that,
couple chat messages that are coming through now.
yeah, I'm seeing that.
The one on I think that's worth mentioning is they're planning for a spring workshop like the one this year at Alverno. And yes, we are going to have a Wacko Spring program. It's going to be a webinar. And I believe it's the first Saturday in March of 2021. And we're bringing in Brian Hansel as a guest speaker. He's a photographer from Minnesota. And this will be a probably about a 3-hour morning webinar. I can't remember was it March 6th or do you remember?
Yeah, it's March 6th. Signing up for it, it's $25 for the morning. He's doing a talk on 2 different topics. One was on landscape photography, I believe, as a general composition on landscapes. And then the other was hotspots in Minnesota, where he shows a lot of the hotspots that he shoots at in Minnesota and is going to explain. It will be a Zoom meeting, a Zoom webinar. That is part of the reason why we are doing this digital forum. It's so that Ken and I can get good at running webinars, so that everybody will have a good experience in March. Because right now, with the way things are going with COVID, there just does not look like there'll be a way for us to have an in-person meeting in March, not for 100 or 200 people. So we'll be doing that. It will be the Eventbrite stuff will be going out to everybody November. What is that? November 6th, I believe, is our delegates meeting for Wacko. And then you'll be able to start signing up for that webinar. So I'm going to end this poll because it looks like everybody's pretty much answered. And thank you, everybody. This one shows that more people are doing it by date than by category. And it's great to see that 98% of you are backing up. And some do it off-site, some do it off-site with hard drive, and some do it in cloud. So that's interesting. I'll add that to my list of stuff that we can talk about as we go. I didn't put in that other one. Oh, okay. Areas of interests. Okay, well, let's do this last one. And while we're doing this one, just to get an idea on cameras and types, because I've already see one question in the chat on, well, we got a couple questions on, one, is it worth moving up from the Z6 to the Z6 II? And then talks about DSLRs versus mirrorless. So, yeah, both of those questions are sort of interesting. I'm looking at the Z6 II mainly for the frame rate and some of the new features and buffer that camera has in it. I never was worrying too much about the 2 card slots, but there are some nice features in the Z6, and actually I'm sort of looking at the Z7 to replace my D850. The things I like about mirrorless over the DSLRs is that you're seeing exactly what you're taking a picture of in the viewfinder, and they're a lot smaller and lighter weight. So anybody else? I know, Ian, you're big into mirrorless these days.
Yeah, the viewfinder is a big thing that I really would have a hard time going back with. It takes an adjustment at first, but being able to review my images through the viewfinder is big for me because I'll be out. I shoot a lot of times in high afternoon light, and it's hard to see the back of that LCD screen sometimes and really see what's happened there. And I'll peek through the viewfinder and I'll zoom in on my viewfinder to see what I'm taking. So I'm on my second mirrorless camera, but I really like them. I like the lightweight, and the autofocus is really fast on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
also
I
mirrorless, and I don't think I would ever go back. And really one of the things that I think I see a lot more photographers doing, especially with mirrorless now, you can see any of the areas that are overexposed in your viewfinder before you take the picture, which is huge because most people now, especially with mirrorless people, we're underexposed, or we take the sky, so it's just a pinch overexposed. But we know when we get home, literally nothing in the picture has been blown out and everything can be brought back. That's a huge advantage.
yeah.
Just another thing that popped in my mind is they can shoot silently, which is kind of a niche thing, but there's cases where I've been on like my daughter's field trip to a library and I'm taking pictures of the kids and everything, and you don't want to hear that noise as they're, you're in a library and kids are, the librarian's reading to the kids. So the
Right.
silent shutting comes in handy too.
Another thing that
I
might be
decided-
really helpful is if you're at, let's say, f15 or 18. If you're in a mirrored camera, it's really dark and almost impossible to focus. But a mirrorless system brings up the brightness so that you still can focus as if it's a fully bright photo. And that's a huge advantage for doing, let's say, wide kinds of lenses where you need everything in focus and you can see everything and focus very clearly, even
Right.
though you're at 20,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Brian, you
Well,
had something?
Couple things. The light value that you see, on the LCD is what's being captured. If I'm underexposed, it's dark. If I'm overexposed, it's bright, it's too bright. So it shows up the way the sensor is going to capture it. Secondly, I've been doing a lot of video off and on. So like out in Africa doing wildlife, to be able to always, with a mirrored camera, you always got to, you go to video and da-da-da. But it's so much more seamless with a mirrorless camera to do video. And be it my Olympus or now my Nikon, it's just, I just love the video in the mirrorless. So much simpler.
Yeah. I like it that with the mirrorless, you can do video and look through the viewfinder, where with my DSLRs, I always had to hold it away from me, and then you're not very solid. I can almost shoot it handheld with a mirrorless.
Far superior.
Yeah, so much better. So, no, I'm slowly switching over. Nikon at least has made it nice in that they've got the adapter, so I don't have to buy all their lenses right off the bat. I can just slowly shift to the mirrorless system as I need to. Somebody
That's
else.
been one of my big issues of switching over. Do you find the adapter? Money has been the biggest problem because I want to switch all my lenses too. But do you find the adapters work very well? Because I've read that you don't have as many features. You lose some of the features of the mirrorless.
With Nikon, you got all the features as long as they're the newer lenses. Some of the older lenses you lose features with. The older autofocus lenses don't work as well with the adapter in Nikon, but the newest modern lenses, those work fine. I don't see any difference. So I don't have much problem at all. All my lenses that I have, except for my manual focus lenses, work just fine with it. Pat.
You also don't get the weight advantage, do you, with the older lenses? Is it part of the weight advantage in the lenses themselves?
Well, yeah, the new lenses are certainly lightweight, lighter weight, and let in more light than the older ones. And the older ones can get pretty big compared to the new stuff. I have a little problem that the new stuff is really expensive, so I haven't bought a lot of new lenses other than 24 to 70 because all my old lenses are so sharp. But the new lenses are even sharper yet. So,
Hey, Jeff, can I also recommend if you're not sure, and especially if you're doing it like curious about the adapters, potentially rent one.
Yeah.
There's online places like lensrental.com, Arts in the Milwaukee area will rent cameras, stuff like that. But you can usually rent the camera, rent an adapter, and then plug in your lenses and see how well you like it, if it'll, work for you.
yeah, yeah. Pat, you had something?
Yeah, I got Canon or a head Canon, and I use the Canon lenses on the Sony, and I have not had any problems at all with it. The pictures are just fantastic. And since I've got the mirrorless, I've never looked back to the DSLR.
Okay.
So, and what I really like is the pull-out window, because it's getting harder to bend down now to get those low shots. So
Yeah.
it's much easier with the window looking through that way.
Sure.
Jeff, we have
Well-
a couple comments here. Michael Jeske also mentioned how mirrorless have such great image stabilization. Ramona had a question about how do third-party lenses work with an adapter? And and Rich Hawthorne had mentioned, do you find with Nikon adapter that the older lenses take longer to focus? So we've got a few questions there for you.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm just sharing the poll. It looks like I'll get to those answers quick on some of it. Canon, unfortunately, wins here. Nikon comes in second. I'm surprised Sony comes in third. I thought for sure Sony was going to do better. And then Olympus, and then all the others. And right now, we have more people using DSLRs yet, and it looks like we're almost 50-50 split in video, so that'll be interesting to talk about as well. So, yeah, so third-party lenses do work with those adapters. At least most of them do. As long as they're, I believe they need the focusing motor to be in the lens for it to work. That's sort of the big trick. So with the older Nikon lenses, it is a little slower to focus, but it's got to be the real old lenses. And again, they need to have their own motor in it. So some of the old ones you have to just manually focus. You can't do an autofocus with it. So if you have, for Nikon at least, it's got to be the modern Type G, and the Pro lenses will work fine. My 15-year-old autofocus from my film cameras doesn't work that well with it. I have to manually focus it, but the f-stop does work because it does have the electronics for it. So that's where you run into a problem with older Nikon lenses. I can't say about Canon how those adapters work because I haven't worked with Canon. And then I guess there are third-party adapters for the Sony cameras?
There's Canon ones out there for the Sony for sure.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
also, Sony's weird in the sense that there used to be an alpha mount. That was what they always had, and then they moved to the E mount with the mirrorless. And I know if you happen to have alpha lenses, I have a couple of them, and if you have any, there's screw mount, which I think is what you're talking about, Jeff, as far as the autofocus not working. The Sony's got a new adapter coming out that'll work with those even if you have old Sony lenses to go to new Sony lenses.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't keep up with Sony because Sony, unfortunately, is not a brand of that I've had good luck with. But it's not their cameras; it's just the other divisions of Sony have messed me up so much that I have a hard time dealing with Sony. I have two $10,000 Sony printers that are sitting as garbage that are perfectly good printers, and I can't get paper for it because Sony decided not to continue to support their stuff, and I've seen them do that a lot, so I'm
Doesn't
a
Sony
little
make
biased
Nikon
against Sony.
sensors?
Yeah, I
think
know
the sensor's
that's yeah, I know the sensor is Sony, but I'll live with that because they're gonna hopefully keep making it. But see, if they stop making sensors, Nikon will just go to somebody else. So, so I mean, yep, not much that I can do with that.
Jeff, can we take
So-
the polling thing down now? Are we done with that?
Yeah, it should be gone, isn't it?
It's still on mine. I'll close it. And we did have one person that uses Fuji that wasn't able to answer that question. So there is one Fuji
Okay.
user out there. I just closed it on my screen, so maybe it was just my
Okay,
screen.
yeah, I thought it was close because I'm not seeing it on the attendee screen.
Okay.
And I think that's all
Now
of
we
them.
got
Yeah,
John
that's all of
Wiley
them.
just brought up a comment in the chat box there, Jeff.
Okay, I got to get down to some of them here. Okay, yeah, he uses Canon lenses on Sony without losing any image quality. And he's shooting Sonys more and more too. So, yeah, and mirrorless does have pretty good image stabilization, and that's the one thing is if you do use the mirrorless lenses, then you get better image stabilization because it's using both what's in the lens and in the camera. Where using the adapter, you're only using what's in the camera. So, okay.
I'll just mention it's also a 5-axis stabilization where most lenses are just vertical and horizontal, but in
Right.
the mirrorless system, it's rotations, and if you're tipping your camera front and back. And that's different than what you would get on just the standard kind of stabilization on a lens.
Yep.
Jeff Kenna's got a question for you, Ken Cena, on the Q&A question.
Right. Are most cameras today full frame 35? Well, they actually still have both going. Nikon has both crop format and full frame, although most of theirs are full frame. They have one crop format one. Canon, I believe, isn't all of Canon's full frame?
They've got both.
No,
full and crop.
they have
Do they have a crop
Yeah.
mirrorless too? Okay.
Yeah, it's not as well supported, but they do have one.
Yeah. And then
a
I
lot
know
of the nature and
has
wildlife
both, right?
photographers are using it.
What was that, Gemma?
I said a lot of the nature and wildlife photographers are using the crop sensors, whereas I think the landscape photographers are using more of the full frame.
Right. Yeah, and that's sort of the reason I'm looking at the Nikon Z7 II is that when you go to crop sensor in that one, you still have a pretty decent file size, pretty much almost the same as what a Z6 is. So that's sort of nice with the large full frames.
Sony's got a bunch in both categories.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's see. We've answered all that. Trying to figure out. Done. Let me get these out of the way. Okay, and Fuji's are all APS-C, so they're all cropped except for, yeah, they do have a medium format one. Doesn't Pentax also have medium? Well, Hasselblad has a nice medium format one too. If a person can afford the Hasselblad. So, yeah. Okay, I guess one question I'll have for everybody, moving on from the mirrorless stuff, that was certainly interesting talk. How many people watched Adobe Max this week? Anybody besides Ken and myself?
I did.
Ellen, I think you said you did. Oh, Kathy did?
It was excellent
Yeah.
and free.
Their first day, they had a lot of problems streaming. But the second and third day, they certainly showed a lot of neat stuff. I was watching everything from Photoshop Lightroom to Adobe Premiere and InDesign. And I got a binder full of workbooks that I printed up and picked up a lot of good tips that we'll pass on some of them today.
Their use of
11
AI for some of the features that they're presenting is absolutely mind-boggling in some instances. And since I got a new iPad with a pencil, I'm trying to do Fresco and Photoshop and Illustrator on the iPad. I invested in the full year-long rental, hijacking, whatever you want to call it, of all of their programs. So
okay.
decided to maybe even try using Lightroom, because I took a few of the workbooks to see what was going to happen. But their sky replacement is absolutely phenomenal with the transparency and using, they have the standard ones, but I'm sure you could just as easily put in your own, and the way they can make it look so real is unbelievable. So there were a lot of really interesting things that came out of there. I got tired of sitting for so long. That was my only problem.
Yeah, 3 days of seminars starting at 11 in the morning till 6 at night. The nice part is they were 30-minute seminars, so at least they weren't real long. I enjoyed that part, but yeah, I got tired of sitting there watching a lot of them. And fortunately, you can keep watching them over again. They are letting you watch the replays on demand. So if you go into I don't know if you can do it still through the Creative Cloud, if you can get there, but they can be worth watching. Especially if you're interested in the Photoshop and Lightroom's tips, and I get the full thing just like Ellen's doing. Yes, Tony.
His mic is not.
You're muted.
Your mic is still muted, Tony.
All right, I was just looking up Adobe Max Keynote and whatever on YouTube. Ellen, where did you watch it?
I watched it at Adobe Max. I went to the Adobe website and I saw all the, I signed up and had a program that I was able to get into right away. So yeah, watched it there, but there were some definitely good workbooks that I downloaded for some of these, for some of the speakers too, so.
Okay, so I could find it on the Adobe website?
Adobe Max.
Ian
Just search Adobe Max and then you'll see everything you can see on demand.
Okay, yeah. Tony,
I put it
look in the chat. Ian just put in, it's adobe.com/max.
Okay.
And you should be able to pick up a lot of stuff. I think that's where all the replays are. I closed all my web browsers for that stuff, so I couldn't find it that quick.
It's nice because you can actually filter by tracks and by topics, and because there's a lot of material, a lot of different things
Yeah.
happened. So
It was great. I needed to learn Adobe Premiere, and I watched a lot of those tracks for the video, and because that's a really complicated program to work, and I picked up a lot and helped me in spots where I was having problems trying to get things worked out. So it was really good. Yeah, definitely worth it.
Trey
So,
also put a link up there, Jeff, and then Sydney mentioned that if you speak Japanese, you can even watch the Japanese version.
yeah. Yeah. We got one other question, and from Ken Cena. He heard that Kodak may be getting back into cameras, maybe film production again, and digital. I haven't heard a thing about Kodak. I don't know if anybody else has. I find it really crazy that Kodak was the one that initially came up with the first digital sensor, and now they're completely out of it. But they keep trying to get back, so maybe they will. So yeah, I haven't heard. I don't know if anybody else has. I haven't been paying attention to Kodak as much as I used to. Well, we seem to be caught up on questions and that. If everybody would like, what I thought I'd do is show you some of the Photoshop and Lightroom stuff that Adobe Max brought up. So if everybody's wants to watch, I will share my screen here and see if I can show you some of the new toys. In Photoshop and Lightroom. Let's see. I need to. Okay. So, let me get to my stuff here. So, yeah, everybody can see my Lightroom with my 200,000 some odd photos. There's a bunch of new stuff, not a lot in Lightroom, surprisingly, that came out. But one of them that's sort of interesting is this color grading. What they did is they took out the split toning on Lightroom and instead put in a color grading that lets you adjust the colors in both the midtones, the shadows, and the highlights. And let me see if I can zero this out. So it's a very subtle adjustment, and in certain photos it can help. I found that what you can do is drag and change the color of the midtones. So this is more of a subtle change to try to fix it. Instead of using maybe changing your color temperature or something like that, you can actually change your midtones, go into your shadows, and, you know, maybe make them a little deeper in a color. I generally find that I go opposites, and then the highlights, I go opposite from the shadows. And you could see you've got a little more control, and then you can blend it. And you can also adjust the balance from the highlights to the shadows. So it's a nice fine control. that you can work with. Now, you can work with all three as in one panel, or you can click on and get the individual ones and then just go between the three.
Hey, Jeff, on the
Yep.
tab that you were just on with the three,
Yeah,
go back
all
to three.
three.
There's a slider on underneath. Is that luminance?
Yeah, that's luminance. So you can actually adjust how bright and dark the overall on, this is the midtones in the, that I can adjust. And then it's the same here. You've got, for the shadows, you can adjust the luminance.
I played with that for like 2 minutes last night and I was like, what is this doing? So, okay.
Yeah.
And Jeff,
So-
I think the inner circles for saturation.
Right. As you move in, yeah, from the center out, it saturates it more. So if I go way out, you could see how much more saturation. And as you go closer to the center, it's less. So you have
Makes
pretty
sense.
fine control.
Just to say that makes sense because when you go to the next tab that you were going to, which is I've yet to even click on one of those, it splits them out.
Right. Yeah. And then you have, if you
Okay.
go to the individual ones, then you've got where you can adjust the hue. So you've got a number of different ways. The saturation, you can see how it changes it here. And then the luminance. So I sort of like the separate ones because then you've got all the controls, and sometimes trying to do it here works easier. And then other times it's nice to use the sliders. So on portraits, it can work pretty nice. Let's see. Let me reset this one. And to reset it, you just hit the adjust and you double click it and it resets everything back to 0. I did find that the center one, which pretty much does an overall one, you know, you may not do as much with. And I tell you, it is easier when you do it individually, but you can at least get some nice tones added in, and, you know, you can play with it quite a bit. It's something that I'm still experimenting with, but it's got some neat capabilities. I never use split toning because I never saw a big need for it, but I can see using this one to fix up color hues in certain areas and to make something stand out. I'm finding like in the shadows, I tend to either warm them up or cool them down. And then when I get to the highlights, I usually do the opposite, and the highlights I usually like warmer anyhow. And yet you don't have to really overdo it, which everybody knows I like to overdo things. But it really lets you sort of tweak a photo. Some of the areas that I found that it works nice in is with water, where if you get a little bit of a color tone in there. Let's see, did everything 0? Come on.
Jeff, can you mask in specific areas instead of doing the global adjustment to a whole image?
No, this is global. So there's no way to do a mask of it. It's strictly a global. Now, they also have this same color grading in Photoshop under their Camera Raw filters. So you could, in a way, mask it by doing the Camera Raw filter on a separate image and then mask that image. But it's a subtle thing. For me, where I think I'm using it the most is when I get like a waterfall here. A lot of times you get a lot of blue sky and the water gets real blue. I'll be able to go in here and just warm up that water and control it. Just, you know, you're just doing slight tweaks to everything. And So it's got its uses. I don't think it's something you're going to use all the time, but it's definitely a lot nicer than the split toning that was out in this spot before. So if you did want to, paint in color, you do have, and this was the upgrade before, you do have in the adjustment area, you can paint and adjust the hue pretty easily. So if you wanted to, say, paint this water here and brighten it, you can then change the hue of it that way. It's subtle because the brush stroke that I did was pretty light, but so you could do it that way if you wanted to. But that's really that's about the only thing they did to Lightroom this time, was really this color grading, and that everything else is pretty much the same as it was.
I heard they made zooming easier. Again, I've not played with it yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed it.
Yeah, everything seems to work a little quicker. My zoom, I have it set to 100%, so it zooms in and out pretty good.
Actually,
so
Jeff,
yeah,
that's one of the changes on the top there. Instead of having 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, it now reads the actual percentage that
oh yeah, you're right.
going to use, and so that's kind of a nice little thing.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that. Yeah, so it goes from 6% all the way up to 1,600%. I like that, because the ratios, I always had to think in my head what that ratio meant. So I hadn't seen that part.
And the zoom feature, I believe, is in the lower left corner somewhere. I'll have to look at the video again to see what.
Yeah.
There's actually a zoom to where you can control the slide the amount of zoom that you want, kind of like like Photoshop.
It's right here.
No,
you can change it.
There's another one, Jeff.
Is there?
Yeah.
I think add that on the bottom toolbar with the drop arrow on right next to previous, that one right there. I think you can add
the zoom. There's a zoom there.
Right
there it is. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that gives you, that gives you a complete manual. All right. I hadn't known about that one. Like I said, I listened to a lot of different ones, and there wasn't much in Lightroom announced, so I wasn't listening to that as much. So, okay. So there's the zoom. You got a manual setting here, and you can go all the way up to 1,600% and down to 6%.
I think there's even a way to draw a box around the area you want to zoom into. And I don't remember what the command is, and it'll go right to that area. So you could outline an area that you want to go right to, so it goes right there. Yeah.
Well, I know if I put the cursor there, it goes to wherever I have the cursor. But yeah, I don't know about draw. I can't draw because it's just jumps. And I've got mine set, it's set now at 68. I like 100% is what I normally use, because I want to be able to see 1-to-1 pixels to see where I'm blown out.
The keyboard shortcuts seem to be a little bit smoother too. I use Command Plus and Command Minus a lot to zoom in and out, and it's doing nice steps. Like sometimes it'd be really weird with the other one; it would like jump around sometimes. I don't know, it just seems to be working a little smoother, so that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with it, and it's hard. Okay, so everything else was pretty much in Photoshop. So let's go with this image here, which has a really bad sky. And let me move that into Photoshop and I'll show you the sky replacement.
Is this your photograph or theirs?
No, this is mine. I just shot this 2 weeks ago before all the rain hit, out in Holy Hill area in Lowell's Lake. So all you need to do is have the photo up, and generally I would suggest processing it so that it's, you know, as good as it's going to be. You go under Edit, Sky Replacement, and you get this little sky dialog box, and it takes it a little while and it pops in. Now you have, these are all the skies that came with Photoshop. They got quite a few different ones, and they have spectacular skies, which includes a rainbow and sunsets. And then they also have sunsets.
So is this
no.
Luminar? This is the Luminar dialogue, right?
No, this is Photoshop.
Oh,
This is
right.
all,
Oh, Photoshop.
yeah, this is all Photoshop. Now, I've loaded in a bunch of my own skies because I shoot skies all the time, and I didn't want to use somebody else's skies. So you just pick whatever sky you want,
Hey, Jeff,
and it
Jeff,
pops it in.
How
Yeah,
do you load in your own skies?
okay. To load in your own skies, there's a little plus mark right here. You click that, and it brings up your dialog box. I've got my skies right now sitting in my Dropbox. Let's see, photos. And I have too many. And you can do either PSDs or JPEGs. I found JPEGs work pretty well. I'm going to go at the bottom of my list because I've got most of the top. Now, the bad part is you have to import them one at a time. You can't like select them all and bring them in, which is a real pain. But like, here's a nice puffy cloud sky, and you hit open. Now you can label it if you want to, and then hit OK. And now here's that sky put right in. You can then, if you want, you can move it around. You do have to watch, like this is a horizontal sky, so you'd have to scale it up so that it fills the whole frame, which you can just scale and then you can move it. You have adjustments where you can shift the edge for where the edges are. You can fade that edge. And then you can adjust the sky brightness if you want. Now, these are all real minor, so you really want the sky to be pretty good. But you can see, you can make it blend in. If you want, you can warm that sky up a little bit to help it match. You do want to make sure that the sun that's lighting up the clouds matches the same as your original picture. So that is somewhat important. You can flip the sky picture. So if I would flip it, but you can tell the sun is pretty much coming from the left here now. And here on the picture, it's coming from the right. So you wouldn't want this one flipped. So you may be wanting to flip your clouds. And you've got some color lighting adjustment and color adjustments. And then you can also output it as a new layer. So, and that's the way that I like to do it. So if I hit OK, you can see here that here's the sky layer. So it's got a brightness adjustment, a balance. Here's the picture, which I can still move that picture around. If I pick that layer and use the move tool, I can still move it. So you can still fine tune it. You could actually even replace this picture if you wanted to. But you can see all the layers that it's created. And if I zoom in, look how good of a job it did on all those tree branches. Did fairly decent. You see a little bit here, but I tell you, I'm zoomed in at, and this is a high-res picture at 50%. Even if I think I zoom in some more, it did an awfully good job of picking out those individual branches. So it really does a nice job with it. And then when you are done with it, it is a group. So you can just close that up and you have your original layer and a group. Now, I can show, this is what Luminar did. If you go into Luminar, just to show the difference, since I know a number of people, and I still like Luminar, and I'm still going to be using Luminar quite a bit. But for Luminar, you go into this creative section. Come on. And they have a sky replacement as well. Now,
So Jeff, at the bottom of that list, you see where it says load custom sky images?
Okay, sure.
That's what you got to do.
All right. Well, let's see if I can make it work. Photos, skies.
How long until they use AI to generate skies?
Yeah,
Not replace them, but to be like, I want 30% clouds, and I want small clouds, big clouds, dark clouds.
I'm not so sure that when Luminar AI comes out that they don't have a feature like that. That's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah.
I think
So
I was gonna
here's
say-
what Luminar did for it, and you can see that even Luminar does a really nice job of blending and cutting up masking. And
The other thing you notice there, Jeff, is the lighting on the front of those branches is brighter. It actually tries to emulate the direction of that light. So when you were zoomed in to those open branches there, zoom back into that area.
I just want to mention when you were talking about when they're going to generate their own clouds, both Photoshop has cloud brushes, and coming out on ON1, they will be having a set of brushes to put in the clouds. So you will be able to draw your own stuff in on either program fairly easily.
yeah, so Luminar works pretty well, and you've got, again, the horizontal adjustments and positioning, and you can relight the scene as well, and adjust the sky globally. So both of them do a nice job. I'm happy that I can stay in Photoshop. Photoshop, I gotta say, is probably behind because Luminar had it out first. And ON1 does it as well, but ON1 doesn't do it nearly as nice as what Luminar and now Photoshop does. So
One thing I did find with Luminar is the sky replacement works better if you do the replacement prior to doing all your adjustments.
okay.
Then when you're doing all of your other adjustments, it's taking that sky into account too. I found that if you try and add it afterwards, the colors get kind of funky.
Okay. That's good to know. I usually have my picture pretty much the way I want it. I'm going to hit cancel because I don't want to bring this back into Photoshop because I'll lose my original. Yes. And we'll do a more in-depth thing on Luminar. Marty's a good expert at it, so we'll maybe talk him into doing an hour talk on that sometime.
I just did it for 3 hours the other night. And we also will be doing that during one of our upcoming chapter meetings as well, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff.
Yep, probably. I haven't been keeping up. I haven't thought that far ahead for chapters, so, but I know we got that going too. Yep. So,
Hey, Jeff,
yeah.
I got a question for you. When you were doing the sky replacements in Photoshop, every time you changed the image or you did move the sky a little bit, that made another layer automatically on that image? Or did you put a layer every time you brought the sky in and did your adjustments on that?
It creates just this one group of layers. Now, there are a whole bunch of groups because as you do adjustments for the lighting and that, it makes an adjustment layer for that cloud sky. So you can see all the different layers that it did make to get everything blended.
Okay.
There's actually a curves layer. Here's a layer for adjusting the mask. Looks like the cloud. I'm not quite sure. It looks like this has got to be blending the horizon in. And then you've got the actual mask for the cloud layer. And then you have this one's got to be adjusting looks like color, and that's adjusting brightness and contrast. So it's creating all these all at once when you do that.
Okay.
And it's also, if you notice, it's also adjusting the photo. If you see the brightness here in the leaves, when I turn that group on, you can see that it gets darker. So it's also trying to adjust for light direction and such as well.
You know, when we go back to our early conversation regarding this topic, you know, I've done a lot of compositing over the years in Photoshop, and you know, really, this is just automating that whole process for us. So,
right,
you know, it really makes it much simpler for the masses to do. Those that didn't have the technical skills to do all that in Photoshop. I still think though that we need a separate category for all this.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It does make it, Luminar made it easier right off the bat, as long as you own the program to drop that sky in. And now Photoshop's made it very easy. And as they keep making things easier, it's just amazing how simple this was. I mean, before you had to really work on making these selections, and that is one of the things they improved in Photoshop, was being able to take your original image. I mean, before, well, we had in the release before, we had the object selection tool that you could just go and say, okay, I want all this selected, and that made it somewhat better, especially on a sky like this.
So for your basic masking, then it automated the masking in that respect then.
Right. And so it's really made the masking so much better than what's been happening. And I just used to spend hours on it. Now I can spend minutes on it instead.
Yeah.
So
Marty, when you talk about making a different category, I think it's important to say that it should be an optional category rather than mandatory. For this example, would you put this in the new artistic category or be forced to? Or would it still be available for the open category, because you get into the point of where do you draw the line? It's a gray line between what's actually modified.
Well, it is, and I guess that's why I brought up. I mean, I've been making composited images for years, so I think the answer to that is going to be left up to the individual organization that's hosting that particular contest. Is how do they want to define that? I mean, I think it's hard to make a global thing for every contest everywhere. So I think it's going to be left to the decision of the local hosts.
I see.
Or you certainly could have a category called composites. And that way anybody who actually composites is in a different group.
But even that gets difficult, because I do a lot of compositing with blending exposures, for example. And it's the same photo, it's just two different exposures. Is that a composite? I mean, there's a gray line.
Right, is photo stacking a composite then? You know, I mean, you're absolutely right, Drema.
Yeah.
Yeah, you almost can't define a line between the two.
No, and that's the problem. It's such a tough line to make that case of where do you draw that line. That's where we're having problems in the competition committee. Is I think the three of us that are on the committee right now, we each have a different opinion on where it's going to be. I mean, I've always had the opinion, and we have a lot of people that want us just to put the original image with no processing up. And we've always fought against that, because Ansel Adams is the best example of, he spent more hours in the darkroom processing his image than he did taking the image originally. And we're just doing the same thing, and it's made it easier for the masses to do it over what it used to be. I mean,
you're actually, right. I mean, any of us who've done any kind of darkroom work over the years knows that we've always been manipulating images. We've very seldom taken something right out of the camera and used it.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't think I would submit to a competition that had that rule.
Well, people forget that the camera is processing the image for you when you save as a JPEG. So there's been processing. It's just you let Canon, Nikon, Sony do it. You might have picked a picture profile. That's processing.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
So it's a never-ending topic, and it gets a little hard to figure out how to control it, and to be able to figure out who did something to it. The better the photographer is at processing, the harder it is to tell that they did stuff to it.
Right. Jeff, I'm looking.
Tony's had his hand up for a while, Jeff.
Okay, Ken, you're going to have to mention that, because I can't see the hands.
Oh, okay, yeah. Tony, you wanted to talk?
I just wanted to say, thus the can of worms has been opened.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, National Geographic, you see it all the time. They have their photo competition and somebody wins, and then they find out that they manipulated an elephant, they got to cancel it. So this isn't just our problem.
Yeah.
No.
No. At the present time, even in nature, we do allow HDR. We allow panoramics being combined. We allow focus stacking. And that's even in the nature division. So those are things that we allow at this time. I wouldn't, when we came up with the sunrise sunset category that we just added to this competition, we specifically put in there that you may not do sky replacements for that category. So we are trying to address some of these things. And like I said, at the present time, open is wide open. You can do anything. And maybe those are some, maybe that needs to be looked at, and maybe we do need to have an artistic category for certain things.
Yeah, we're certainly going to need to discuss it at the delegates meeting coming up for these next couple competitions and that. So, but I just was going to show, like, here's the sky replacement on this one. Now, the one thing that will give it away, and it doesn't do, and I don't think Luminar, right, Marty, it doesn't fill in down below.
It doesn't yet, but that's coming. I watched a video on that yesterday where the reflections will be coming out in the not the immediate release of the AI, but it'll be a subsequent release probably in the spring, where you will see like those clouds reflected down in the water, and it looked absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. Now, I was going to check something because in the demo that they did for Photoshop, some of their skies were actually doing it. But yeah, it doesn't seem to do it in my images or with even their images.
No, and right now that would be a quick giveaway. Well, was the sky replaced or not? Because if the clouds were there, they'd be in the water.
Right.
But it's going to get harder after Luminar does that AI skies 2.0.
Yeah. The nice part is that they did fix up their selection tools. So you can do it fairly easy by just making a selection like this.
Dropping it in, yeah.
And then going up to select and mask, which lets you refine it. And here you can just refine it out. And it actually does a pretty decent job here of getting it, especially if I get down here. But it does take time in that you've got to go through it all. But their selection now has gotten a lot better.
Then would you just inverse the sky then to drop the function in then?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to get all of this because but I did this the other day. Come on, a little more down here. And you have a number of tools here that will let you get it a little bit more. And then you can refine it.
If that's for me, I'm not here.
And then once you get it refined, I mean, I'd spend a little more time with it, but that's in the refinement area for masking, and then you hit OK, and it creates that mask for you. And then you need to just invert it. And what I found you can do is bring in this and just duplicate it, bring it down. And now one thing is you need to get rid of this mask. And then, and then there is a link that you have to get rid of. Unlink the layers because right now it's linked up to some stuff up here. And then you could flip that mask vertically under transform.
Yeah, this is the good old days when you used to have to do all this Yeah.
Yep. And then bring it down. Yep. Come on. And actually, all I ended up doing was moving that up. Command I. Okay. Turning that off. Oh, no, I got myself mixed up.
Yeah, you flipped the photo and not the mask.
Yeah.
So invert the
I
mask.
know why. Here, it needs to go down there. I don't need the mask here. There we go. I just had it in the wrong layer. But then it's just a matter of moving it, you know. And then what I found is I faded it a little bit by dropping its opacity just to let some of the water through on this bottom layer so that it made it look, and then you could, you know, soften it by blurring it. But see, now you're going into the old-fashioned way of how you used to replace sky before, but you certainly have to watch out for reflections yet. So yeah, you're right, Marty. If Luminar brings that out next, I believe Photoshop will be following with it pretty soon too.
If anybody wants to kind of get a preview of it, if on YouTube, if you search for Jim Nix, Nix, he does a lot of great tutorials on Luminar, and he's got a really good one. It's about, I don't know, 6 or 7 minutes long on what it's purported to be like.
Yeah, and Luminar AI, I think, is going to have a lot of stuff in it for that is simple for people to do.
Right. Which is going to
Because
make
it's
our
all-
job even more challenging with these contests because it is going to be so simple.
Right. Now, I will say that one way that we're able to tell, maybe I shouldn't tell everybody, but under file info in Photoshop, there is a history area that you can actually see where everything is, what everything's been done to it. I think it's under raw data, but you got to be able to read a lot of code. But everything that I just did is all right in this file here. So I'm able to tell after a while what's been done. But that takes a
I
lot
wish
of
they
work.
would. One thing I like about Lightroom history over Photoshop is that Lightroom always remembers that history. It would be nice if they allowed you to read that back in Photoshop and to be able to look at the history and change it.
Yeah, there is in some ways with Photoshop a history. If you save these items into Photoshop's cloud, they do a version history there that stays with it. And as you update that version, you can save those different versions out, but it's got to be saved in Adobe's cloud, and then it's under version history. And you're able to actually see it, but when you save this image, instead of saving it back to Lightroom, you would do a save as, and you could save it to Adobe's cloud, and then you would get a version history. So that's something new that they just added. But I don't want to break the chain up. So yeah, you're right. It'd be nice if the history would stay with it. Like I said, the one way to find history is under file info to see what you did, but you can't quite back up with it.
Jeff, one of the things I saw, it didn't do the reflections, but what Photoshop did do with the sky replacement is it lightly put in a little, like if you had a yellow cloud or something, it put maybe a little yellow in the photo below. Not a whole lot, but just to kind of show that it does kind of reflect down into the lower part of the image.
Yeah,
So
right.
that is in Photoshop, but the full reflection is not.
Yeah.
And I'd
Yeah.
have to imagine their engineers are working on that. If Luminar is going to have it, Photoshop will be right behind them.
Yep.
Jeff, I had a question from Stan on focus stacking and focus stacking, which is multiple images, is acceptable in our nature definition. I believe it's in the nature definition. And Stan, you would have to look at when you enter your competition, look at the nature definition for the category you're entering in. And I believe it's there.
Yeah, I can't remember about focus stacking myself, so I don't think I have.
Well, let me see if I can get out of here and take a peek at some of that stuff.
I thought I had the last. Yeah, I don't have the announcement, so and that's where it would probably be in. So yeah, Ken, if you can find it, you double check it. I'm not sure if focus stacking is or not, but let me move on to the other thing that they've added, which is the new neural filters. I find this one really interesting for portraits. Let's see. Do I want to do ugly me? We'll do me. What the heck? Because it works pretty good and it's pretty funny.
I watched the video on this. This is wild.
Yeah, this really blew my mind. So they have neural filters. It's right up here under neural filters. And you have, let's see. Well, you've got two different ones. You've got, this is the area, the smart portrait, which is still in beta. And they do this in the cloud, but it takes, and if here I'm smiling a little bit, but if I want to make my smile bigger, make myself look happier, if I go way over, now it takes a little while for this to run its course. And come on. Because it's doing a lot of adjustment here. And this isn't, and all of a sudden I have a smile. It adds teeth and everything. I just, it blow my mind. So that's happiness. And then if I want to be unhappy, you've got surprise, anger. This is the one that's really screwy. Facial age. Now, here's my normal age. Here, if I'm 50 years older, I've got white hair. I got all these wrinkles now where my triple chins are. Or I can make myself younger. And all of a sudden I have more hair. And that.
I got to see surprise. You got to do surprise, Jeff.
Okay, I'll do surprise. That's not too exciting, is it? That's surprise? Geez, how about if I go to negative surprise? I don't know what that might be. Yeah, that's more of a smile. That's funny. But you've got the gaze that you can change. I keep going all the way to the extremes, but you can see the eyes actually move. So now you can adjust the eyes to look in the way that you want it to look. You can change the hair thickness. give yourself a little more hair. That one is not as nice as the other one is adjusting the head. You can actually turn it completely to the left and to the right a fair amount. So if they're not looking in the exact direction that you need them to, you can change that direction, and then you can adjust the gaze to get them to look back into the camera.
Jeff, have you tried this with a picture of a group of people yet? And can you do individuals within that group picture?
I haven't tried it that way yet. And I do have, so let me cancel out.
The nice part is when you're done, it creates it as a layer, I think. So you can mask.
Yeah. Right.
Because
Yeah.
you saw there, as you change the head, especially, you notice like some artifacts start happening around the neck, you know, because you've turned the head and there's some weird goofy parts. So you can come back in and you can clean it up after.
Yeah. So I've got two models. So I haven't tried this yet, but I thought I'd save it for this group. So yeah, it does pick out both heads, and it looks like you've got the selection of the heads here of which head you want to work on first. So I'm on the blue head. Let's see if I can get her head to go this way a little bit more. This has got to be doing a lot of math calculating. Yeah, that seems to be a little more. And if I turn her gaze towards me. So it can be a really handy one to fix little things up.
And like HDR, it can be used to the extreme and have some really weird looking photos.
Yeah. You do need patience with it. And this is a new computer with a lot of RAM, but it's going up quite a bit. So you can see some of the things that you can do with it. You can feather it, adjust masking, and then you can make it a new layer, or you can do a duplicate layer masked, duplicate layer, or just do it on the original layer. I almost think either a smart filter or at least a duplicate layer masked is your best bet. And then you could see you've got the mask, so you could see before and after. I mean, that can be handy for certain things, especially in a group photo where somebody's head isn't turned quite the right way.
Get those shots with the kid just not looking right at the camera.
Right, right. Now, they also have a few other things in this neural filter. And this is all done with AI. You also have style transfers. So you can do, they've got a whole bunch of different styles for crazy looks. And they've got quite a few right now. So this would be a lot of painting styles. So I'm still playing around with a lot of these, but it can be sort of interesting, the different things that they're able to do. Now, in this section where the smart portrait is in, there is also a makeup transfer that so if you have somebody with makeup in with one photo, you can transfer it to another. There's depth aware that creates haze to be able to make more depth in the scene. Colorized, which is going to be for black and white photos. Super zooming in, getting rid of JPEG artifacts. And then these are a bunch of others that they're thinking about. I think the photo restoration and dust and scratches for old photos will make life easier to retouch old stuff. None of these right now actually work. They're just asking, would you be interested in having these? And you can say, yeah, we're interested. And I think then they'll work on those a little more. Right now, this one, if I turn it on, it just has a couple of settings, low, medium, and high. The super zoom, so it looks like we'll really put it to a test here.
Is this the magical movie enhance feature?
Yeah. Yeah. Enhanced image detail. We'll have it remove JPEGs. Noise reduction. Let's sharpen it. And we'll even have them, if we can, do enhanced face detail. So yeah, it doesn't look like I can actually do it. Oh, it's still processing. No wonder why. Well, that's because I also had a filter on there from the other, but you could see that's actually not too bad how much that's zoomed in, even though I did a weird filter on it. That's quite a blow up because this is with an old Nikon D2X, an old 12 megapixel camera from, this was shot about 10 years ago. So that's the neural filters. So that's something that's new and be for fun playing around. Trying to think what else. I found it was nice. I had done it with this airplane shot. I think it was this one. Oh no, this one. Yeah. I actually replaced the clouds too with it. So, because we didn't have we had a pretty overcast day at, so I was actually using a cloud. I spent half my day yesterday putting in clouds. So you can see I have a lot of different clouds. They're all mine. Nobody else's. There we go. That looks pretty good. Just to make it quick. And then to be able to use the filter, I just merged all the layers together and had that on top. And then went into the neural filters. And so this neural stuff can be sort of nice for, at least I like it for giving some different looks to a standard picture. I was using Topaz sometimes for some of this in their painterly stuff. So now what's nice is I don't have to start looking around. I can do it all here. This one's not bad. So there's a lot of choices, unfortunately. I can't find the one that I like the best. I'm going to have to start making notes. I think actually it was it this one? Oh, huh. So each time I do it, I get different results. So, but some of these painting ones sort of are interesting. And then you've also got some preserved color if you needed to, or focus on the subject. And then you can adjust that style strength to bring back some of the original picture, and even adjust the brush size. So you got a lot of adjustments that you can do. So it makes for interesting ways to play with your photos. Yeah, that's a decent one. And then, of course, you can, blend this with other stuff too. So you could actually drop the opacity down and bring back some of the original. But yeah, so that's some of the new stuff that's new in Photoshop. And Lightroom. One of these days we can talk about some of the other stuff that's out there. Let's see. I'm going to just stop sharing here. So that's about what I have. Any questions before we call it a day?
That was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
So hopefully, if anybody has suggestions or things they'd like to see, please send me an email and we'll add it to the thing.
Again, if that's for me, I am not here.
You're not here, huh? Yeah. All I get are junk calls. I should have turned that phone off. I turned all my other phones off. But yeah, please let us know. And also for people for next month when you come, if you come a little bit early, if you want to be a panelist, come about 10-15 minutes early so that we can bring you in and make it a little easier so that we don't fool around with it during the once we get the meeting started as much. I don't know if I'll always have Ken here. I know he wants to be out shooting at HorrorCon right now, so I dragged him in because I knew I was going to have a lot of people, and this is sort of a two-person thing. Come on, phone.
Hello, will you be voting for?
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. Are you going to vote? So that's all I have. But yeah, send me an email for things you'd like us to talk about. Think up questions for next month so that we have stuff to talk about. I will try to put out what we're going to do in the second hour. But the plan so far will be that the first hour will just be a general discussion of whatever we happen to come up with. And then the second hour we'll do something. I think next month I was going to look at on one photo stuff because we got some new stuff coming out there dealing with portraits. And depending on how long of a talk that might be, we might do some stuff with the new Luminar if that's out yet, the Luminar AI. So, but yeah, let you know if there's other stuff, please let us know, and we'll.
Yep, the recordings from these are going to be posted to the WACO website. Is that correct, or where are you
Right.
finding the recordings?
They're going to be on the WACO website right now. We're recording live on YouTube, and so it will be on the WACO YouTube site. Right now it's on my YouTube site, and I will going to transfer it over, or I'm going to use the recording that I'm making through the Zoom right to my computer. So we'll see which recording looks better, but I'm going to get it set up so that this will be a live YouTube thing as well, and people can watch it live there if they wanted to, and be able to replay it later on. So we're trying to get this all figured out.
You know, in the future meetings, if Kent can't be on, I can always help you out with some of the
Okay.
behind the scenes.
Yep. It's good practice. And if we screw up, it's not a big deal. But it's a great way to learn how to do this. So, and it was nice to see 50 some people at the start of this. So, great. Well, thanks everybody. We'll call it a day. Enjoy the rest of this cold Saturday, and we'll see you next month. And for some of you, we'll see you at the next couple of meetings. I got a whole bunch of them going.
Thanks,
So
Jeff.
great.
Thank
We'll
you.
see ya. See ya.